What do you do when you stumble and you feel like you're going backwards more than forwards? Stick around. We're going to be talking about that today.
Hey, and welcome to the Living Richly podcast. My name is Rob Dale, and I'm here with my great friend, Eric Deschamps. And it's so good to have you here for the journey with us. Today's topic is not one I can relate to because, well, I just kind of live
have it all together,
and never stumble, can't even speak, but I never struggle in the Living Richly journey. No, I mean, in all seriousness, this is a great topic to dive into. Episode 28, we're coming up on 30 episodes soon.
Crazy to
30
think.
weeks that we have been on the air, and they haven't banned us yet.
No, we're still here. We're still here.
And it's
a miracle.
We have talked about the model. We've talked about all kinds of the principles, looked at all these different, and yet here we are. We're going to be very open and vulnerable about the fact that, listen, neither of us lives this out perfectly. Not by a long shot. In fact, I don't think we ever will. There will be a lot of days where you're moving along and doing really great with it. And then there are going to be days not so great.
Right. There are moments in every journey where you feel like you're making great strides, great advancements. Other seasons where you're following the little by little, slowly by slowly, step by step growth model, right? And there are times where it feels like you're experiencing significant setbacks. Things happen in your life, in our lives, that make us stumble or that trigger past pain, past trauma, past fears and insecurities. And what do you do when you're in those moments? I mean, we've had so many people ask us that question.
It's a great question. What do you do in those moments of transformation? Now, I've certainly found that as I go through this journey, certainly some of those foundational pieces are there. And we're going to get into that about how there, even when you feel like you've lost all the ground that you've made up, the feeling isn't necessarily the truth. And we'll get into talking a little bit about that when we look at some of the principles that we can apply in our lives when we kind of stumble along the journey. But we do want to acknowledge, and it's okay if you're listening or you're part of this, and maybe you're at a point where you're going, man, this is tough work. This notion of looking inward and trying to work this all out, and it's tough work, and it can at times some can feel like giving up because of the failure, because we fall back into old scripts. Kelly Flanagan, he was on our the show not that long ago, and he even talked about how that recurring, sometimes that shame kind of sneaks in again and is there. And something triggers, something happens to bring us back into that. Talk about maybe some of the experiences you've had recently or over the course of this journey where there's been those triggering moments for you.
Well, I'll speak of one specifically that happened about 3 months ago, where a number of circumstances in my life just aligned, it seemed, and triggered all kinds of old fears, old insecurities, and pretty deep stuff that went right to core scripts that I've talked about in previous episodes. And I actually, these events happened over the course of a Friday night, and by Saturday morning, right into Sunday, I was in a really bad place. I was doing anything but living richly that weekend. I was upset. I was discouraged. I was very fearful. Actually, when I look back on the entire weekend, I was probably in a fight or flight response most of that weekend, and had the opportunity to unpack that with Sherry, who's my coach, and talk about what happened. And it was definitely an episode where past trauma, past issues were being triggered by present realities. And actually, a lot of what we want to share with you today are principles or concepts that I was able to lean upon in that moment to see me through that, to navigate through that. And something that I've shared with many folks since that time that have found some of these concepts really, really helpful. So these were born out of my own stumbling, my own being triggered and not being in a happy place, but working through it and recognizing that that too is part of the journey.
And so our goal today with the episode today is we're going to get right into it rather than kind of a lot of preamble and talk about different concepts and maybe.
You mean you're going to get right to the point is what we're saying?
We are going to get right into it and get focused.
You just completely ignored me.
Who are you?
You're so dead to me.
Don't make me do it. And we want to talk about there are some key principles, some things. And so if you're tuned in and that's where you're at, you're just kind of thinking, man, I'm stumbling here. I'm frustrated. Things aren't really going well. I'm not living richly this weekend, this month, the last couple of months, whatever it is. Let's talk about some of the principles that we've used, that we've learned, that we apply, that help get us back on track when we feel like we're off track. So maybe what's one of the first principles we talk about?
Well, I think before we even jump into principles for just a moment is what's a trigger?
We're going to jump into
what's a trigger? What does it look like to get triggered?
Yeah.
And let's face it, like sometimes it's just a family visit, right? And it triggers something. Sometimes it's a fear and insecurity. Someone says something and we feel so out of sorts, and we recognize that I love this language. When the drama, decibel, or distress levels being felt or expressed are out of sync with the current situation, it's time to really lean in and pay attention. In other words, when your response to whatever's happening is greater than actually what's happening, there's a mismatch between your level of distress, the decibel levels, perhaps the distress levels are far more elevated than what the situation calls for. Chances are you're in a triggering moment. Some past fear has been, or insecurity or trauma has been triggered. We talk about, and this probably happens a lot to a lot of us. I don't know about you, but I know for me, family. We talk about how family, no one like family can push our buttons, right? They know how to push the button, which button to push to get a certain response. And, we can be doing great and feel like we're really growing and evolving. And we joke around all the time, if you think you're evolved or enlightened, go home for Thanksgiving, right? Because family, there's nothing like family to test that resolve. But the point of being triggered is you are literally overreacting. You are overstimulated. You are over responding to what's actually happening right in front of you, because it's actually not about what's happening immediately. It's about what it represents to you.
Yeah.
And so that's where the principles we want to talk about when we look at. And I would say one of the first ones is be kind to yourself. We're going to have these moments because healing is never a once and done type thing. Right? We talk about the need to, even when we talk about radical self-acceptance and doing that work of really loving ourselves and learning to give ourselves that sense of worth, that's not a once and done, I'm completed, check that box and move on, that's kind of a lifelong journey, right? And where we may learn to, express that towards ourselves in certain aspects of our lives, all of a sudden, a different fear gets triggered, a different past experience gets triggered, and all of a sudden we have to revisit it and say, can I give myself the same self-love, the same compassion that I would have given myself in previous seasons of my life? And the way that I always like to position it is, think of if your best friend or your child, if you're a parent listening to the show, came to you and talked about a struggle that they're having, how would you speak to them? Likely you would speak to them with love, with compassion, with understanding, with empathy. But think about how we often talk to ourselves, right? And I know this was a big one for me is I'd get triggered, I'd stumble, I'd be reminded of something would happen. And I know for years I didn't even recognize I was being triggered. I would just overreact and then kind of like, how the hell did I end up here? Because I wasn't present to actually what was happening. I started to get present to it. And then when it would happen, instead of giving myself compassion, I would beat myself up about that and say, if only I was a better person, then this wouldn't be happening.
And you're absolutely right. And for me, I know one of the ways that I can tell I'm about to not be kind to myself. So I've learned to listen for this is when something happens, if there's a triggering moment or whatever that is, situation is happening, as soon as I start the should again, right? As soon as I start shoulding all over myself again, that's when I know, oh, I'm about to be unkind to myself. Oh, I should know better by now. I should have learned this, right? And
I should be further down the road.
Down the road. Yeah. And as soon as I start, I shouldn't have, or even whether I should have or shouldn't have done whatever. As soon as I start using the shoulds, I know, oh, that's now a trigger. That's a word that says to me, Rob, you're being unkind to yourself.
Right.
Take that pause and take that break. And so I think absolutely right out of the gate, Show compassion to yourself in the course of in that moment. The second one, the next one that I would suggest is this notion of slow down. I know that for me, when I'm in that moment, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I did it. Okay, boom. How do I fix this? And I'm all of a sudden high speed, and I'm a pretty chill guy. And that's usually another indication that, oh, there's something going on here, because I'm trying to find the easy fix, the fast, quick microwave solution to whatever this motion that I'm feeling, because I need to get out of it faster than I got into it even.
Right. And it's again, this is not a checkbox on your to-do list. This is not another project. This isn't a race. Chances are you're not going to out hustle or out muscle what you're feeling. And especially if you are in a triggering event where, again, when we talk about someone has pushed one of your buttons and a past fear or insecurity has surfaced, and you find yourself, like I said, going backwards instead of forwards, you're probably in a fight or flight response in that moment. So trying to amp up your entire nervous system to fight this thing is actually going to work against you. You're giving energy to the wrong part of your brain and to the wrong part of your spirit. Slowing yourself down literally is allowing energy, changing the energy around it can make such a difference.
And with that energy, and this is where probably in the entire Living Richly journey that I have been on, if I had to rank the number one lesson that I have learned, it's out of the book Untethered Soul. And it's this notion of, oh, that's interesting when it comes to thoughts, whatever. So when all of a sudden I'm having this thought, I'm having a should moment, and now rushing, and now I'm feeling that, and I gotta solve this. I gotta solve this. To your point, breathing, to stop, pause, breathing, go, okay, that's interesting what's happening.
Right.
I'm going to let that flow through, and now I'm going to look at it and go, okay, so now what needs to be the next step to this?
Right.
But having that opportunity to, in that slowing down and processing, and then allowing that energy first to go through so that I can now process it separately from it being in me, is so critical to that part.
Right. Absolutely. So little by little, slowly by slowly, slowing yourself down. I think another one is this notion of acceptance. We've talked about this in so many different ways, in so many different examples on the show, in the episodes that we've done, but leaning into acceptance and reminding yourself that this too shall pass. This is what's happening right now, and I'm doing the best that I can. There's this notion, we've all heard the saying, what we resist persists. And so back to this wrong use of energy, that when we're feeling ourselves being set back, triggered, where we're feeling past fears and anxieties showing up in the moment, triggered by a present reality, this notion of amping ourselves up, trying to out hustle, trying to out muscle it, trying to resist it. Often all we're doing is it's like throwing gasoline on a burning fire. What we need to do is throw water on that fire. Right. And I think there's this notion of, okay, I still remember that weekend I described at the beginning of the show. And I had to keep reminding myself over and over and over again that weekend, being in a very heightened state of anxiety and fear. Again, this has probably happened to me a handful of times to this degree, but it was a significant one, but kept reminding myself, this too will pass. This is what's happening right now, and I'm doing the best that I can, but this too shall pass.
So good. So good. These are rapid fire. We're just throwing out some tactics and some ideas, and hopefully some of these are going to kind of, you'll grab a hold of some of these in there, because they're all principles. They're not in order of how you do them. The ones that resonate are the ones that we want to encourage our listeners to maybe embrace. And I know for me, one of the ones, this is why the 4x4 model that we introduced. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to episodes 1 and 2, where we just talk about living richly, we introduce the model in its general terms. And then we go into, in those early episodes, certainly walk through all of those things. But the idea of what has helped me when I'm triggered, when those moments happen, is the fact that I've already created my rituals.
Right.
So I know the things that bring me energy, the things that deplete my energy. And when I'm in a moment like this, once I've slowed down, I know now, okay, I have some time to work this through in my head and in my emotions. One of the best practices is to go do something that enriches me,
right.
Something that gives me that sense of feel. So if it's summertime, hey, get out on the water, go for a walk along a path, go do a workdown, whatever.
Go have a drink with friends, right?
Friends.
Yeah.
There's so many different, but go do something. Sometimes people go, I don't have time to do that. I have to solve this right now. No, the best thing you can do right now is go do something that brings back some energy.
Love it.
So that you can now address it.
Absolutely. I mean, hollow and meaningless activities may numb you in the moment. And that may
eat a tub of ice cream.
Right. Tub of ice cream, or I'm going to binge another show, or I'm going to scroll through my feed for a couple hours on social media. They may distract you. And sometimes that's okay too. Sometimes, listen, we can't be doing the work 100% of the time. We can't be healing 100% of the time. But I think what we're trying to encourage is that rather than turning to mindless, numbing activities to try to see your way through those tough moments, is to turn to activities you've identified that fill your cup. I saw this great video on Instagram. I think it was actually this morning. And the lady that was doing it, she had a glass of clean water saying, here's my life, my happy life. And then she says, but life shits on you. She literally, right, life shits on, and she dumps dirt. Thankfully it was dirt. She dumps dirt into the glass of water, and then she swirls it around. Of course, the water becomes all murky. And then she says, most of us, what we do in those moments, then we go about, and she's with the spoon now, she's trying little by little take all the dirt out. Well, no matter how much she did that, the water stayed murky. She said, you don't get rid of the darkness by focusing on the darkness. She says what you do, and she grabbed a pitcher of clean water and started pouring it into that glass of dirty water. And what happened is, in time, all the dirty water was expelled, and all that was left was clean. And so there's this notion of, when I know the activities, the things that I do that fill my cup, turning to those things, and not so much as an avoidance strategy, but rather a coping strategy. Turn to something that makes you feel good, that fills your cup, can go a long way. And I think attached to that is this notion of reminding yourself, when you're experiencing a setback, that your brain is plastic. We talk about the neuroplasticity of the brain, its ability to keep growing, to keep evolving, your ability to continue to shape your thought life and your thinking. But a lot of us think our brain is plastic. In other words, we experience, not plastic, but elastic, right? We think it's elastic. So when we experience a setback, we think we're snapping back to who we were. Right? Those moments can be so significant where we feel like we've really stumbled. We're really not going through a hard time, or we're really going through a hard time. We're in that moment of fear or insecurity that we were so accustomed to and thought we had outgrown. And now here we are again. And we tell ourselves, oh, I've just snapped back to a previous state. You haven't snapped back to a previous state. Your brain is plastic, not elastic, even in that moment. And I know now, I look back on this event that triggered or inspired a lot of what we're talking about here today. It inspired the episode itself about what to do when you experience a setback. Is that weekend, as much as I wouldn't want to relive it, okay, anytime soon, because it wasn't a fun experience, what I learned, how I grew through it. So not only was I not snapping back to a previous moment in time, I was actually forming new neural pathways that are going to serve me in the future when something like that happens.
It's okay to have bad days.
Let's just normalize that, can we?
It's okay you mentioned just a moment ago, it's okay. You're not going to feel like living richly every moment of every day. It's interesting. I'm in the middle of reading the book, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything. Yes, absolutely anything. Albert Ellis. And it's a great title. I think we've talked about that in a previous episode. My new favorite word comes out of that book, out of the first couple of chapters.
I think I know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, because the 12-year-old boy in me absolutely loves this word. Yeah, yeah. And it's not his word, but he actually gives credit to the author that he reads it from, and then he basically talks about it over and over again. And the word is
awfulizing.
No.
Oh, it's not. I love that. Isn't that funny? We thought we were on the same page. We're not.
Totally not.
What is your word? For me, it was awfulizing.
Masturbation.
Oh, masturbation. That's a great word, too.
It's a great word.
Yeah.
And he talks about in those early...
Just to be clear, we said masturbation.
Masturbation. No, he absolutely talks about in those early chapters of his book that one of the reasons why we get so anxious and is that we have this notion that everything must be, and as he says, and again, this is why I love it so much, we masturbate all the time. And so everything is about, and so even when it comes to living richly, it's this idea of we must always be living richly or always on this journey and always all of this. And I remember the freeing thing, I talk about this probably 4 or 5 episodes ago, when I realized that I really enjoy reading a good fiction.
Right.
I love reading a Stephen King book or whoever it is. I've got a bunch of different authors. I found a new author that I've been reading. I'm reading another one of his books, as well as the Albert Ellis book. But I felt guilty because it was, why am I spending, 3 days or a week or 2 weeks reading this latest Stephen King book when now I'm not reading a personal development book. And I realized, no, actually that's part of living richly, just to get lost in the character of story and all of this. And this notion of it's okay to take that step back. Not everything has to be always absolutely on point, and give yourself that grace and the freedom.
100%. I think when we talk about the importance of normalizing setback, normalizing bad days, normalizing triggering moments, that these are actually a normal part of human experience and are not a poor reflection on your ability to navigate life, right? I love the word from Ellis's book where he says we're so prone to awfulizing everything or catastrophizing everything.
I think masturbation is a better word.
Masturbation is probably a better word, but it's this notion. He would go on to say that what our problem is we have too low of a frustration tolerance. In other words, our tolerance for when life doesn't show up the way we want it or expect it to show up, our tolerance for that is too low. So we get knocked off center too easily, and our emotional reactivity is too high, right? When we begin to normalize that bad things happen to good people, that bad days will come just like good days will come, and not catastrophize them or make them more than they need to be, then we'll find ourselves less emotionally reactive. And when we talk about emotion, another key to navigating moments where we feel like we're experiencing a setback. We talk about beating ourselves up for thinking the wrong thing. How often do we beat ourselves up for feeling what we feel is feeling the wrong thing? So I would say a key strategy, a core strategy to cope when life is really going opposite of what you hoped it would be, is to give yourself permission to feel fully. Even naming your emotions, the ability to name them can help you tame them. And we'll put it in the show notes. There's a great tool called the feelings wheel. We've referred to it in past episodes, that oftentimes because we don't have the emotional literacy to truly understand, or the emotional acuity to understand what's going on internally, then we're tossed around. The ability to name the emotion, to say, I am feeling X, and get as specific as possible, and then giving yourself permission to feel it, that it's not wrong to feel it. It's not bad to feel it, that you're not weak for feeling it. You're human for feeling it. And so give yourself permission to be human.
And you are not your feelings.
You're not your feelings. You're not your feelings. You're not your thoughts.
Right. Exactly. You're not your feelings. You're not your thoughts. And I think the notion of, again, that naming the feeling, and we see this all through history. We talk about this in one of the previous episodes, that as you name the feeling, and oftentimes you break the power that feeling has over you, by simply identifying it. Now you have the ability to process it and feel it the proper way.
I know that one of the keys for me, and I think it was probably the most significant breakthrough for me in that weekend that I described, where I was in this fight or flight moment. And actually, my coach thought, like, this, what you're describing sounded like an actual PTSD type episode. That's how severe it was. But I remember it took me hours to get here, because I finally got to a point where I'm going, wait a second. This is not happening to me.
Yeah.
This is happening for me. I don't have to work my way through this. I get to work my way through this. And I always give credit to the get to mindset to Kate. That's a Kateism for sure. It's a lesson that she has taught me that has become so central to my way of seeing the world. But it was a major shift where I began to see all of a sudden what in the past I would have seen as this sucks, this is terrible, I am going backwards instead of forwards. And all of a sudden I began to say, wait a second, this is not happening by accident. This is not just some weird random moment. This is actually happening for me, and I get to work my way through this because I get to figure out what's going on. And I may not be able to figure it all out right now in this moment, but the universe is allowing this to happen for me to get present to something that is unresolved in my thinking, in my heart, in my memories, and then be able to apply my more mature self now, a more mature version of myself. Because let's face it, when you're being triggered and you're remembering past pain, you're remembering your past self who had less experience, less knowledge, less skill, right? Now this event is being brought to your attention again. And its current situations is doing it, but it's really not about the current circumstances at all. It's about something else. But now I literally became present in that moment to wait a second. So I'm not the same Eric.
Yeah.
This is triggering fear from, we're talking, this went back like over 10 years ago. Some circumstance happened in my life over 10 years ago, over a decade ago. And here I am being able to look at it and say, wait a second, I am not the Eric of 10 years ago. I have grown. I have learned. I have evolved. I've learned all kinds of skills that I didn't have then. So this is an opportunity. This is not a setback. This is actually a leap forward because I get to apply current Eric to an old situation and bring healing to it.
Language matters. How often do we say that, right? Language matters. And that notion that you're right, the experiences, all of that, you're armed with all these new tools, all this new language and how you identify and how you think and how you talk about that experience that has set you up now ready to do that. And I think it's so important for us we don't live in the past, but we lean on the experience and the learnings of the past. And one of the ways that we can do that is, and I certainly see this, and I know that this is often for me, when something shows up now and I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And I'm lost and I can lean on the fact that, you know what, I've done hard things in the past.
Right.
I've worked through some of these things in the past. I am now growing and I've taken on more as a result of that. And I am now ready and equipped to take on this next challenge to become the next version of who I am.
Right.
What an incredible opportunity, not challenge, that this presents for me.
The fact that it's resurfacing now, whatever that may be, whatever trigger is happening for you, whatever past experience is coming full center in your life and feels like it's stealing all your joy. The very fact that it's resurfacing is a testament to your growth and evolution, because it's almost like the universe is saying, you're ready for this. It's proof that you have the courage and the strength to face it now, perhaps in a way you couldn't before. One of the things that I think is also so critical to be mindful of when we are, again, being triggered and feel like we're experiencing a setback due to present circumstances triggering past trauma is that the current actors in the triggering event are not the real issue at hand. Okay. So it may be a family member saying something to you that triggers you to remember something else, or it could be a set of circumstances that reminds you of a past painful experience. The current actors, the current situation are not really the issue. They're merely serving as reminders of past programming and trauma that's now resurfacing.
Yeah. And all of what you're feeling and thinking about that past trauma isn't necessarily the facts or the truth of the moment today.
Right.
All right.
Well, wait a second. Isn't hindsight 2020,
right,
Rob?
Yeah, no. yeah, right.
Isn't it?
Right. It's absolutely.
Do you know that the recent research, they're showing that less than 50% of what we remember is actually true?
Yeah.
That over 50% of our memories are constructs or versions of what happened as opposed to what actually happened.
Yeah, keep talking about that because I want to pull up a quote. I've got to pull this out of a notion of, and I want to find it, and I know we're right in the middle as we're talking here, but it's so powerful around that notion, and I just want to pull it out of here as to how it's talked about in this book, and I hope I can.
Well, you keep looking. Let me keep going. So if the current actors are not the real issue at hand, what's also important, especially, listen, we are not psychologists. We're just two guys sharing. their journey, sharing the lessons that we've learned along the way. Sometimes when people talk about being triggered, they're talking about some really significant world-altering trauma, right? I think what's really important to remember in those moments and in others is that you're not in that season of your life right now. Even though the fear, the anxiety that you're feeling feels very familiar, the scripts that are going through your mind feel very familiar, you are not reliving that moment right now. You may be reliving memories of that moment, but you are not reliving the same exact situation, and you can retreat in most cases to a secure, soothing sort of environment as necessary, right? I would say this too, that mind your self-talk and your old scripts, right? I think that we've talked a lot about our thinking and how it shapes our reality and our perceptions. When you are being triggered like this, or are in a less rich moment in your life, your scripts, your old beliefs that were limiting and in many cases damaging will likely be out in full force. They will be out in all of their glory as you experience this. Learn to label them. I love what you talk about. Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
And learn to label it. Call it what it is. Don't embrace it. You don't have to embrace it by labeling it. As a matter of fact, I remember that particular weekend where this happened, and I'm working through it. And I remember, those old scripts, I was feeling like I felt years ago. I was feeling anything but rich. I was feeling like all of this has been a fraud, and this is all a mistake, and nothing's really changed in you, Deschamps, and you're just a failure, and all the same scripts that I felt like I'd overcome were there in full force. And I was able to say, and I remember saying this out loud, actually, I said, "Oh, I remember you, but I don't believe you anymore." And it wasn't just a trite statement. It was an actual affirmation. Say, "Yep, I remember you, and I remember how dark you were, and I remember the darkness you brought to but I don't believe in you anymore. So you best move on."
Right. And as you change your thinking and you change those beliefs, and this is where this quote, it just was jumping in, and I was trying to remember where I got it from. It's actually from Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Oh, he's so good.
So in Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, he makes this statement. Let me read the quote. I'm going to read it right from my iPad because I want to get it right. "Not only can we change our brains just by thinking differently, but when we are truly focused and single-minded, the brain does not know the difference between the internal world of the mind and what we experience in the external environment. Our thoughts become our experience." Yeah. And that notion that, so when we're triggered and we fall into old thoughts and we start thinking, it becomes our reality. And that's why it goes back to what jumped in, was that notion of we have to remind ourselves of what we're experiencing right now isn't necessarily real. It's a past when we're focused on the past. And so how do you change that? You rethink the moment. You change what you think about that moment, it will change the experience for you.
Dispenza would go on to say in the book, and does go on to say in that book, this is how many of us stay stuck in our past. We program ourselves to stay stuck in our past because when those past thoughts and feelings come up, we actually feed them and we entertain them and we embrace them as opposed to challenging them. Right. And again, it was such a life-giving moment to be able to make that statement. I remember you, but I don't believe you anymore. Now, this part is so critical, and we've talked about this over and over and over again, and I don't think we'll ever get tired of sounding this note because it is so critical to the Living Richly journey, especially when we feel like we're experiencing setbacks or we're struggling and it's not going well for us, is to stay connected to the people who can help us sort through what we're feeling. Stay connected to those that will love you and support you and encourage you through it. Listen, we may need some retreat time, right? And by retreat time is you may need to retreat for a little bit and reflect on what's happening and think about it, but try not to isolate, because isolation feeds the past. Isolation, it's almost like it can be an incubator for all those past scripts and thoughts and feelings to really begin to take over. So reflection, retreating to reflect and to work some things through is fantastic. That's great, and that's highly recommended. As a matter of fact, we've said it before. the living richly journey requires reflection of some sort, some sort of reflective practice, but try not to isolate from the people that love you and who are going to help you navigate this
and
tough
if you're
season.
worried that you might isolate in your retreating, then reach out to someone and say, hey, listen, I need to take a step. I just need some time alone. I need some time to focus on this. Check in with me in a couple of days and don't let me go longer than that.
Right.
To be able to, even if you need that, some people do, some people don't, but be able to now trust on your network and your community to be able to retreat without the danger of isolating, of getting caught into retreating another day and another day and another day. And all of a sudden you're into darkness. You want to be able to, make sure that you've got those boundaries in place. When we can't trust ourselves in those boundaries, that's the power of the community that we're part of.
Talk to your coach, talk to your therapist, talk to your friends. Make sure it is someone who is going to give you the space to show up as you are, without judgment, without accusation, without condemnation, but will give you a safe space of grace where you can work it through. And that's why you got to be careful who you talk to, but you need to connect with people. The last thing I would say to this, it was the last major lesson, at least that emerged for me out of this weekend that I experienced not that long ago, was, and this was a big one for me, is trust that you will learn what you need to learn. Just trust that you need to learn. You're not going to learn everything right now.
Right. And what if you miss something?
What if you miss something? I believe the universe will give you another chance. Absolutely. The universe will queue up a new set of actors in similar roles who will trigger maybe another part of this trauma for you, or past pain or insecurity, and you're going to have an opportunity to address it layer by layer. But you don't need to learn everything right then, right now. Remember, going back to what we said earlier, little by little, slowly by slowly, take it one day at a time, one moment at a time, but trust that you will learn what you need to learn. And if you miss something, the universe will give you another chance.
Thank you, universe.
Right.
This feels like, it wasn't that long ago where we did the greatest episode that has ever been recorded in the history of episodes. And that was, of course, the Star Wars episode, in which we tell the Star Wars story in 60 seconds or less.
We didn't do it. We didn't succeed.
It almost
Trevor lost an arm.
Yeah, exactly. It's why he's not here anymore.
You could listen for the sound of one hand clapping.
Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah. But this feels a little bit like we just tried to do what to do when you're triggered in 60 seconds or less. It was 35 minutes or so, but hey, we kind of got it. But this was a bit of rapid fire, just jumping in with a bunch of these.
You know what I would love to hear as part of our response to this, when we post this out, listen, you've had your own experiences, you've had your own journey. No doubt you have tons of wisdom that you could share with us. We want you to share that with us. When these episodes get posted, either you can direct message us if you like. You can post on our social media feeds. Here's some of the strategies I use when I'm triggered or when I'm going through a setback. We would absolutely love to hear from you so that we can share those ideas and those strategies out as well.
Which is what I was about to say.
Did I take the words right?
No, yeah. No, that's good.
We're aligned. We're on the same page.
We are aligned. Well, we weren't with the words earlier, so glad that
I still think awfulizing is better, but it's okay.
Masturbation.
Okay.
Masturbation is the key. It really is fun because people go, what?
What?
If you're listening to this during your lunch break and coworkers are walking by wondering why you're listening to something,
turn the volume up real loud and say the word masturbation.
We'll see where that goes. No, listen. If you're in a place where you're feeling like you've taken a step back or something is showing up and you're wondering, where was all that work that I've been doing? The work is there.
Yeah.
The lessons have been learned. The process is, and so hopefully some of the tips and the suggestions that we provided today will help you in just kind of navigating through that moment. It's a moment. But navigating through that moment, as Eric has already mentioned, we'd love it if you would share those comments and maybe just provide us some input into some of the things that you do. While you're doing that, take a moment to like, subscribe so that you're able to be part of this community and the episodes as they come out. Most importantly of that, would you share the episode with a few people that you are connected to? We get even some of the letters that we hear and some of the emails, the letters. Listen to me sound like an old man.
The letters that came. Some people are even faxing us, apparently.
Some of the faxes we receive. Some of the emails and
the telegram I received the other day was especially meaningful.
Smoke signal that was sent to me. Some of
and when the show fell apart really fast.
No, but the emails and the DMs of how some have shared out one of the episodes with family members, with others that are within their community, just in how it's impacted. That means so much to us when we know that not only are we able to impact and maybe provide some encouragement to you in your journey, but also to the journey of the people that matter to you. So maybe take a moment and do that.
Last thing I recommend is go to our website, livingrichley.me/act, ACT, where you'll be pointed to all the recent episodes, including this one, show notes, whatever we referred to. As a matter of fact, all of these principles that we covered today will be available for you in a simple downloadable PDF so that you have them. And you can also sign up there for our newsletter to be kept up to date on exciting new opportunities that are emerging for coaching, group coaching, retreats, to help folks on their Living Richly journey.
Thanks a lot for being a part of this episode and part of the journey with us. And until next time, we just encourage you to live your best life.